What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of SSPN. And Ethan, it's
Hmm.
Sunday, and it is the Sunday before the draft lottery. We're almost here, bro. Just tell me, what's your excitement level? What are you feeling as we're heading into this draft lottery week, where the Spurs, regardless, even if
Mhm.
worst case scenario happens, they get number 7, it will be the highest draft pick that the Spurs have had since 1997. How are you feeling?
It's the most nervous yet excited I have felt since becoming a Spurs fan. Obviously, the nerves of being in playoff games my entire life, that was a different thing.
Right.
This is really just like excitement because it feels like a lot of our future as a franchise depends on what goes on Tuesday night when we figure
Mm-hmm.
out which draft pick that we're going to acquire. And I really don't think we can lose with a top 6 or 7 pick. Like, we're going to have a really good young player no matter what. But at the same time, you would hope that we get top 3 because of the enduring of terrible losses that we've had all
Mm-hmm.
year long. Injury bug has ridden us all season long, and it's been a very difficult time for fans in general, especially Spurs fans who are used to winning in a certain kind of way.
Right.
So just pumped, dude. I mean, this could really change everything for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the blunt way to put it, Ethan, is as much as, you know, I'm trying to figure out how I want to word this. The way I want to word, basically, what I'm trying to say is that everything comes down to this. Like, the reason we did this whole season, the reason
Hmm.
we tanked, like, it's not like the NFL. That's what I was trying to figure out a way to word it at the beginning. Like,
Yeah.
we don't, it's not guaranteed. It's not like, okay, you can just suck and then you're gonna get a top 3. Like, you're gonna fall wherever, your record was. Because if that was the case, then we would have for sure the number 3 pick right now behind the Pistons and the Rockets. So that's the, flip side of this, that is the positive for the Spurs, that allows them to potentially, jump one or both of those teams. But at the same time, Ethan, it just all comes down to those ping pong balls. But that was
Hmm.
where Brian Wright and the Spurs ownership decided to place their chips this year. It really comes down to this Tuesday. It's almost more important than the draft itself. I mean, depending on the pick, especially if you get a really good pick, then the draft will be more important. But I mean, this whole season, everything that we've done, like, yes, obviously we've talked about player development throughout the year. There's so much, and there really was a lot of good that came through the opportunities that Keldon got, that Devin got, for heck, that even Champagny got,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
near the end of the season. There's a lot of, you could go down the entire roster, whether it's Charles Bassey, or whether it's Zach Collins emerging as a starter. I mean, there was a lot of good stuff that we did see this year, that definitely there was a lot of purpose on the court. But throughout that, front office, you and I knew that this was going to be the end result record wise. So it really just all comes down to this. I don't have anything else more to say, but it's like at the beginning of the season, or really when we made that DeJounte trade, and you could even go back to last year, they probably knew what they were doing when they made the Derek trade,
Hmm.
that they were moving in this direction. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like really almost going back to then, March of 2022. It's like they kind of made the decision that May of 2023, or that would have been February, because that's when the trade deadline is, was gonna be the most important date for the Spurs,
Yeah.
really, since the turn of the century. I know that sounds crazy,
No, but
and
it's true.
but yeah.
I mean, you could honestly even and date it back all the way to the DeMar trade or
Right.
the LaMarcus buyout. Like, LaMarcus buyout leads to the DeMar trade, and if you really want to put your tinfoil
It's
hat
a very
on,
good point.
you could say that whole trade was to elevate DeJounte to a point where his trade value was through the roof. Then we trade Derek, who was having an off year, but we get a pick from him and Josh Richardson. Then DeJounte. Then we trade Josh Richardson. Then Jakob Pertl. And this all kind of dominoed into what this upcoming Tuesday
And
is.
a
It's like,
bunch of picks
and
too.
a bunch of future picks. So yeah, and those could hit too. So this is not necessarily our last, opportunity at acquiring a top 3 overall pick, but you certainly hope it would be, because if we get one now, we don't necessarily need one in the future.
Hmm.
And Victor Wembanyama, Scoot Henderson, Brandon Miller, these are all, most draft experts say they're like generational talents, guys that you can really build around. So it would be extremely beneficial to kind of take this top 3 pick and cash out moving forward and kind of get back into the swing of things, which is the playoffs, what we're used to.
Yeah. um it's just so tough. It's the
Oh,
lottery is just so tough, man, and it's just like, of course, like I said, it all comes down to the ping pong balls,
I had
and
a nightmare 2 nights ago. Sorry to cut you
yeah,
off.
no,
I had
please tell
a
me.
literal nightmare, and this is not possible, and I had a nightmare that we dropped to 13.
It's not even, yeah.
And we drafted some random person that I'd never heard of too, and I was like, "Oh my god." It was all so not worth it, but that's not gonna
Yeah.
happen. Not possible.
Yeah. It's just crazy, like, thinking about it, because like you're saying, like, it's gonna feel like this season is failed without a top 3 pick just because you're 22 and 60 and you're one of the worst 3 teams in the league. Like, and as much as it is normal for teams like this, to have this record and then fall to, like, I mean, the highest percentage for the Spurs to get picks wise is number 6 at 26%. So, like, that is,
Yeah.
that's totally a possibility. It happens every year. I mean, think about the Pelicans. The when was it the Cavs who jumped up to number 1 with Wiggins, or were they already bad?
I
I think
think
they
they
were
were
already
already bad.
they were already bad. It was the Pelicans that kinda jumped up for Zion.
Yeah, that was
Um,
crazy.
yeah, but David Griffin, I think, had another one of those. That's why I was thinking Cavs. But anyways, the point is that is like it's almost like there's a higher percentage chance of us not getting a number 3 pick, even though we still do have the highest odds for getting a number 3 pick. It's just it's just such a dichotomy, and it's so
Yeah.
interesting because once again, it's like this whole season was basically like, let's go bet on this. And then if it doesn't work out, it- I mean, as much as I like the talent we have on the roster, and as much as I think even with, somebody like that, like it's still going to be a higher pick than we picked Sohan at. Um, I feel like if if you fall into that lower range, the Spurs are going to be right back here next year. Like, even if we get to 30 wins, it's like we're still going to be just playing the lottery game again, basically hoping that we'll have less odds. I mean, you know what I mean? Like that would
Yeah.
almost be like more of a purgatory. Obviously, we have a lot of assets to make moves, and I'm sure that the Spurs understand this. They've been planning for this, as we just kind of alluded to, for who knows how long. So
Mhm.
I'm sure they have a plan, and with all the assets they have, there's some moves that they could definitely make. Um, to potentially mitigate, if they were to miss out 2 years in a row in the lottery.
Mhm.
Obviously that's looking way far ahead, but it's pretty crazy because like a lot of the implications from where we fall tonight, I mean, obviously they have an impact on next season, but that really has an impact. All of this is I could have said this anyway. Obviously, the draft lottery is going to impact your future and what you're going to do next season. But for a team at the bottom like the Spurs, like it really lays out kind of the trajectory in the next 1 to 2 years for them, because there's a big difference between getting number 7 and number 1. I mean,
Yeah.
even this year, like you said, with Brandon Miller, Scoot Henderson, and Wembenyama, in a lot of other years, if you take out Wembenyama, Scoot's number 1. And if you take out both of those guys, Brandon Miller's number 1 in a lot of other drafts. I mean, if you stick any one of those two, if you stick Scoot or Brandon Miller in the Anthony Bennett draft, like, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, that's 2013, but that's the kind of talent pool you have. So that once again just kind of emphasizes like the importance of all this. And the crazy thing is, and I think, the more I'm talking about it, and we're doing this episode, Ethan, I think the way I'm talking is kind of embodying it, is it's just out of our control.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
like that's the craziest part about all of this. We have to just sit and wait like little ducks and just hope that things go our way. But the one thing, I mean, I don't want to jinx it, Ethan. I mean, I'm sure other people have already said this now that I think about it, so I'm probably not jinxing it. But the one thing that is kind of curious is that um over these past couple years, I think I was reading some sort of end of season review for the Spurs by the Athletic or ESPN or somebody, just doing like their end of season review for the Spurs. And they were talking about how there's so many teams that have kind of like more small market teams that have been in the lottery just like consistently, purgatory, like the Pistons, for example, or the Hornets have been there. I mean, they've had some. Was there a year where they were in the play-in recently? Am I
There last year they got blown
okay?
out.
That's right. That's right. Okay. So,
Yeah.
but still, even before that, they've been hovering around there after Kemba left. Shoot, even when Kemba was there. And like the Spurs, whenever they have came into this situation, it seems like they've just got lucky. Bluntly, I mean, our
Yep.
last 3 times we've been in this situation, we've had David Robinson, Tim Duncan, and Sean Elliott.
Yeah.
Was Sean Elliott number 3?
I think so. Yeah, he
That's what I
was.
was gonna say. So like that's the one, and I'm not trying to bet on that. I really don't want to get my hopes up because you like I said, our highest percentage bluntly is number 6. But at the same time, it is kind of curious that it's just like worked out for the Spurs that way, like every time they've been in this situation. Maybe this is the time that finally it doesn't, but it was just kind of an interesting note. Like I said, I can't remember who wrote that, but they were basically just talking about like all these other small market teams seem to just get screwed over and are just, indefinitely in the lottery. But it seems like when the Spurs go there, they go get like, I mean, at minimum, a player like Sean Elliott.
Yeah, and that's kind of what scares me
It's
the
all
most.
luck. All luck. That's the
Yeah,
other thing is the Spurs like have no control over that. It's just kind of happened. So
it scares me the most, Jude, that you say that because I believe in jinxes, and it feels like to me suddenly it wasn't like this at the beginning of the season, but now national media, Spurs media, pretty much everybody that covers the NBA is kind of shoehorning Spurs jumping to 1, it being a perfect fit for Wembanyama. Tony Parker says he wants Wembanyama to go to the
it's because
Spurs.
they played on the same team. He played on his team last
And
year,
yep,
not
and
this
then
year, but
there's the
yeah.
whole narrative that makes sense, and for the NBA it works, where it's like the Spurs get 3 number 1 picks, all 3 generational big men, like the NBA is better when the Spurs are, a juggernaut, like all those storylines that are
He
being
fit the foreign
yep,
prospect. It fits in all of it.
it
Yeah.
almost fits too well. And now I'm scared, and also everybody on Twitter doing their tankathon, lottery
Right.
odd simulations, everyone's saying, "Oh, the Spurs win like 80% of the time." And it's like, that scares me. Stop saying that. Stop saying it out loud. You're gonna make it not happen. We're gonna drop the 6 because that's just in my mind, that's how things work, is that as soon as you, like, say it over and over and over and over again, like we have,
hmm
it's not gonna happen. But it would make sense, but it still scares me that we talk about it so often.
Yes, I completely agree. And for those of you guys who just want one last look at the lottery odds, if they're showing up for you, I hope they are. There's some
Mhm.
times where we do this and then this doesn't pop up, but it pops up for me and Ethan. So I'll just read it just in case it isn't on the screen, but I'm pretty sure it is. 14% for number 1, 13.4% for number 2, 12.7% for number 3, 12% for number 4, 14.8% for number 5, 26% for number 6, and then 7% for number 7. So, I mean, the good news, I guess you could say out of that is that the lowest percentage, like the worst case scenario is the lowest like percentage that could happen. That's the bright side. I mean, with that being said though, the highest percentage is just one pick above that. So, just that's just the lottery at its finest, Ethan.
Yep. It seems to work out that way every year.
You want to do a tankathon simulation to end this, Ethan,
Oh,
just for the memories?
yeah, let's do it. If the
All
Spurs
right.
get done, I'm gonna cry though, because it's not gonna happen.
It keeps cutting you out when I change. That was my bad.
No, you're good.
Okay, here we go. Oh yeah. Dang it.
Damn.
This makes me happy, but it has to be the dang Rockets.
I know. I'd rather it be Detroit, honestly.
I would rather be at 4 and the Rockets not have the
Hey,
number 1
shout
pick.
out Dallas jumped up to 4.
Yes, this is hey, that was planned. That was planned right there, man.
Heck yeah.
They knew that's why they lost the last game of the season.
Yeah, and it really worked out for him. Good job, Mark Cuban.
Oh my gosh. Well, y'all, any final thoughts, Ethan, before we end this? Just any message ahead of Tuesday?
Basketball gods, we have almost, I won't say never, but we have almost never done you wrong as an organization. Please, it's been a rough couple years. Our plans with Kawhi got derailed. Smile on us one
It's
time.
Zaza.
Zaza did this to us. Please
Yes.
smile on us once. Please. Please. We don't ask for much. We're never here. Like, so just do it the one time and then we'll move on.
Look, just cancel out Zaza and we'll never ask anything again.
Yeah.
Just
Pretty much.
like right that wrong and also right the primo wrong while you're at it. Like
Oh
fix
God.
that too. You got some background work to do on that one.
Yeah. Let's make
um,
sure we don't draft any flashers this time.
yeah.
Let's
Um,
go interview everyone's therapist and be like, hey, if they ever
oh my gosh, man. And that's the other, I don't even want to get too into that, but it's like if we draft somebody that is like, was a second round projection or something, I'm just always going to have that connotation attached to it now,
Mm,
just because of how
yeah.
that whole thing went.
Mm,
But okay, one final question for you, Ethan,
okay.
because I'm sure this is what the people want to know. And we've kind of talked about this in some of our prospect profiles. But if worst case scenario happens and we fall from that 4 to 7 range, who is the prospect that you want most?
I think I'm leaning toward Jairus Walker, to be honest with you.
Interesting. Tell me why.
Well, we briefly talked about it. I don't necessarily think having more depth at that big spot is a bad thing. I know we really like to get a point guard because Trey Jones is probably our weakest starter at this point moving forward. But Jairus is very versatile, defensive minded guy, can fit into our system offensively. Uh, we kind of had a small disagreement about the polishedness of his offensive game, but I still do think, despite me not thinking it's super polished, has a lot of room for growth, especially since he always makes the right play. Very Spursy type player. Uh, and I feel like he'd be ready to help right off the bat, whereas the rest of the guys might not be around that range, if that makes
I can
sense.
see that. No, I definitely can see that because I think the one in my mind that's kind of I feel like the obvious choice for people would be Amen or Amen. Um, and really the two that I was thinking between was Jairus and Asar. So um but I think when it comes to your last point there, where it talks about just who's going to be able, like, who's going to translate to the NBA the quickest, who's going to just like, whose game is going to be able to translate. And also, I think his frame helps as well.
Yeah,
I think that definitely Jairus out of that group would be the most NBA ready to just come on the floor. Also being, at the big time program he was at.
yeah,
Um, you're wrong. Anyways, um, but no, Jairus, no, but going back to what you said though, because I actually really do think like I didn't when I said he has a mid range jumper, like we were talking about that. I don't think it's polished. I just think that he's shown the flashes, like you said. I think that he has the room to improve in so many different areas. Like a lot of times, people who are 6'8", 240 don't have the ability to just take people off the dribble a little bit and have some handles, but that's besides the point because just people don't have that skill set in general. Like people who can, like even in a guard, like the person who I think of, and I know that this is going to sound like a weird comparison, but think of like Shea Gilgeous, because Shea Gilgeous can take people off the dribble and beat them off the dribble, but because he's 6'6", against a lot of guards, sometimes he'll post them up and fade away and get shots that way. And that's what I mean with Jairus.
yeah,
He has potential in in the post and as a ball handler, which is just really rare for a modern four. I mean it's similar to Sohan, because Sohan kind of has that ability, and now I'm thinking about them as a front court, and I'm just talking myself into it more. Ethan, I agree with you. I think I have to go with Jairus, but I like Asar's fit with the Spurs as well. But I just think even though he's a wing and he's not really that much of a shooter, I just feel like we're more log jammed there, where we have more space for somebody like Jairus. And if Jairus really grows into the potential that he has, we talked about it in the video, maybe he turns into a 5. And
he
with our
could.
lineup, because we have the height, it kind of mitigates that. I mean, you even saw that with the obviously they have Jaren Jackson as well. But and it was because of injuries, but I mean, and they lost the series. But the point is, the Grizzlies, I mean, played Xavier Tillman, and it wasn't like the worst thing on the planet, is what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
for
So,
sure.
anyways, I'm with Jairus Walker too, and I think that his also the culture, that Houston culture that we talked about, translates over to the Spurs very well as well. So, I'm high on him. Y'all go check out our prospect profiles if you haven't yet. I'm going to try to get some more clips out on those. I've been a little lazy, I'm not going to lie, but we got a lot of time till the lottery, so there's lots more time for all that stuff. So thank y'all for hanging out with us today. Tell us what you think about the lottery and what you're most excited for in the comments below, and also who you would want in that 4 through 7 range if we don't get a top 3 pick. Thank you all for checking us out. If you enjoyed today's content, don't forget to hit that like button below and subscribe. We're getting closer and closer to 1,000. Baby steps, baby steps. We appreciate all y'all jumping on board. A couple more new subscribers over the last few videos. And if you want to stay updated with all the good stuff over here at SSPN, follow us on Twitter at SSPN on YT, at Jude McLaren, and at Ethan_Quintero. We'll see y'all in the next one. Happy draft lottery week. Go Spurs, go.